Welcome back to the Holosky Podcast. We're your host. I'm Steven.
And Kyle.
And it is another work week, Holo Cult. Monday it is. Hopefully the show gets this work week kicked off in the right direction. And it's not too miserable. We're going back in on the 4chan UFO Whistleblower. I think I got enough for another episode here. So we're going to hit that. But before we get into it, we've got to get through the business, so check us out at all our socials: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Discord, Reddit, you name it. Search up a Holosky Podcast and you will find us. Come and hang out, be part of the community, join the cult. You know the drill. If you have a paranormal experience you'd like for us to feature on a future show, Kyle's got some info for you.
You can write your story out and shoot it over to the email, which is going to be holoskypodcast@gmail.com. You can call or text the holophone, which is going to be 618-556-0837. You can also use any type of like voice recorder, your memo app on your smartphones, record yourself, and then shoot that over to the email as well. Whichever way suits you, you're more than welcome to do that.
Something a little different in the business today. We want to take the time to shout out MetaCon. It's coming up July 14th through 16th this year at the KCI Expo Center in Kansas City, Missouri. If you're in the area or you're into paranormal and spirituality, you're definitely going to want to check this out. It's got celebrity guest Travis Walton's going to be there from Fire in the Sky, Alien Abductee. A whole bunch of people. There's going to be over 100 vendors, 18 guest speakers, 10 plus on-hand workshops. We've been there before. It was awesome. Definitely check it out. If you'd like to support the show, there are many ways you can do it. First and foremost, word of mouth. Spread the word of the Holocult. Share it on social media. Help get the episodes out there to the masses. We appreciate it. You guys are putting in the legwork and helping get the word out. We have a Patreon. If you'd like to go over there and see what tiers interest you, all kinds of goodies from cool holo swag to ad-free episodes, extra content, all kinds of cool stuff over there. Go over there and check it out. See if there's anything that piques your interest. We have a Venmo where you can leave us some monster money. If you've got any pocket change laying around, we appreciate that. We have our store up and running. We've got some cool things over there. Check it out. And you can go to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and review. And when I find them, I will gladly shout them out. Today's comes to us from our website. It is from... it doesn't say. So, Anonymous. They say, longtime fan here, 5 stars, one of my top 3 favorite podcasts. I think it'd really be interesting if you did a show on the Rh negative blood type. It's weird. Well, Anonymous, I've looked into it before, but I haven't really taken the time to sit down and try to map it out. It is strange trying to figure out the origins of it and whatnot, but that may be a future episode. But we appreciate you taking the time to leave us your kind words. We're glad to be in that top 3. I'm curious who the other 2 are.
Absolutely.
From there, we're going to move on to our listener experience of the day. It comes to us from our friend Eli. Eli says, Holosky, not hugely into UFO and aliens and such because I've come across a huge amount of research and whistleblowers who tell of the impending alien invasion that will happen soon. And apparently it's mostly going to be by our own governments. Anyway, that's beside the point. I'm listening to the Bledsoe episodes. You mentioned S2, Kyle, right by Area 51. Well, Bob Lazar worked at S2, I believe he said. That is where he was trying to reverse engineer the tech and the crashed UFO. Also, another quick point. Admiral Byrd's diary had shared when he went to Antarctica. They were greeted by round flying saucers that flew way beyond our jets or anything we'd seen as far as speed and agility. Also, they had swastikas on them. Then he meets up with beings inside the ice who tell him that they were expecting him, etc., etc. I won't go into all that, just saying the Nazis seem to have some of this alien, in parentheses, that live on Earth, not space, technology, so on and so forth. Then we got all the Nazi scientists for NASA. So for all we know, these crafts are our own government, and the holographic technology they have looks 100% real when used. And that was in the 70s. Someone exposed that, so who knows how far they've come now. Add in explosions and fires and destructions with holographic invasions, and you have a virtual Independence Day. Then the Earth will have to all come together in order to beat the invasion, per said government officials. Then we have a one-world government, money, religion, etc., etc. Love the show, guys. I'm more into Bigfoot, but all of this hidden information we have the right to know. It all leads to the same thing. We're being constantly lied to, brainwashed, poisoned by food. You know how it goes. I go deep in this shit. Thanks, guys. Eli. Can't say he's wrong.
No, not at all. Not at all. I agree with some of your points there. You know, we've heard, I want to say we just kind of like almost legitimately covered some of that stuff in the Collins Elite. You know, about the invasions and stuff like that, and it being the government. But I do personally, I mean, I'm if you've listened for a while, you know I'm into aliens, so I definitely am always going to support the theory that they are real. However, I wouldn't put it past the .gov to seize an opportunity, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Do not trust them.
No, not at all. Ever.
Because they're only looking out for number one.
That's it. That's actually it.
And we are not them.
Nope. And that all will play into next week's episode. So be looking forward to that.
Yes. So from there, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, which is Whistleblower number 1, go back and check it out. That way you're not lost as to where we are. A little recap. Somebody bumped into 4chan saying they had insider knowledge on specific government information on UFOs. They did a Q&A, and I went through it and pulled out all the questions and the answers that were posed on that thread. He only did it for about 3 days, and the thread has already been deleted by 4chan, which is kind of sus in itself because 4chan is just a cesspool of all kinds of weird shit, and for them to delete this is kind of strange. But anyway, go back, listen to this, and listen to that, and then listen to this one, and kind of form your own conclusions. I'm just here to put out the information this guy sent forward. So we're going to start with the question from where we left off last week. It says, sounds like OP's ship is from the later form. I would not be surprised if the pilots are in sentient craft now. He responds, no, they're remotely controlled or directly controlled. This zookeeper analogy is strange. I agree with another on here. Most zookeepers like their jobs and care about the animals. They display high levels of empathy. The whistleblower responds with, some of the tools designed for abduction would make you rethink this. A lot of them cause pain and harm. A common tool we find seems to scramble the coherent thoughts and make the subject childlike. The best way I can describe it is almost like forcing a stroke onto someone without actually having one. It makes you delirious and forgetful, but also childlike for a few hours. Are these beings capable of empathy? Do they have emotions? I assume they must have learned something from the recovered bodies. I've never interacted with them, only heard information passed along. They can be upset, though, through previously mentioned topics. They definitely have emotion. Are they from off-world and are true ETs? The U.S. and leaderships were adamant that they were off-world. Why all the cloak and dagger? You're asking the same question leadership struggles with. We're not entirely sure. If the Air Force is confused, like you say, why is it the only agency we know of that is not cooperating with Congress and the AARO? You might get a laugh out of this, but the United States Air Force is kept in the dark. We operated above them. A close coworker wondered if even the president knew, namely Trump, because we both thought he would just tell everyone, which we heard before.
Yeah.
Any idea what they might be waiting for? Personally, I think they just want us to grow and become sentient. UFOs arrive all the time that dock with this mobile construction unit. The way I see it, travel time is quite fast. If something was coming to destroy us, it would have arrived here already. Finding the truth made them cry and fear for their lives. Their offspring will live. I've always suspected my department was under much higher one with more information. I can't speak to any horrors or worries since none were mentioned unless they were pitching theories. As I stated above, a lot of U.S. top brass don't even know about it. I heard the phrase "fuck Bill Clinton" thrown around regarding access to information. I'm pretty sure he had asked, if I'm not mistaken. So that question was taken from context of an earlier statement about U.S. officials learning about the aliens and what they were here for. And it said finding the truth made them cry and fear for their lives and their children's lives. So he was just responding to that. Are they human looking, or do they resemble something else? Is it something we've seen written about in UFO topics or pop culture? They are smaller than humans and look like your typical gray aliens you see. Holes for ears, and they can look at very bright objects without being blinded. I've never seen one move their mouths, but I've also never interacted with one. What do you know about these? Operation Fishbowl? Nothing. The Varginha crash? Nothing. The Roswell crash? They were accurate on some things. The material could have been internal components or small pieces of the alloy around the craft. The alloys I saw looked different from the pictures. Operation Moondust? Rumors only. Besides Russians, do any Europers have data or programs researching this as well? They are mostly in the dark and probably on the same level as the United States Air Force. Are you with the OPRP, the Open Protocol Resource Project? No. Did SOCOM put up that open public contract trying to get someone to build them what equates to one of these UFOs, in terms of capability, as a honeypot to try and catch non-human actors in military contracting companies? It's a pretty fire question for some plebe on 4chan. No idea. From my limited knowledge of the bio side, I doubt that they are trying to infiltrate us. They seem to know a lot about us already. Abductions still occur, mostly in areas with contamination or disease. Did you hear anything related to the U.S. secret space program? Not that I put any credibility into the words of Corey Good at all, but Gary McKinnon claimed to see files describing off-world personnel and ship names that do not exist. Yes, the U.S. wants to be able to leave the solar system with their craft and explore. They were working tongue-in-cheek with the Russians before I left. I'm sure the invasion of Ukraine put a stop to that rather quickly. Do all nations coordinate their efforts studying this Bermuda Triangle factory, or is each doing their own thing? Each of them are doing their own thing. The U.S. is pretty greedy with what it finds. We will usually extract information but never offer any in return. What is the mining tool that China has supposedly reverse engineer capable of? It's hard to explain if you haven't seen it. Basically, it extracts minerals via beam or light directly out of the rock. It has the ability to fill the rock to some degree. China was able to figure out how it works and make a similar version. The problem with the one they built is it only operates a few seconds before it runs out of power. They still don't understand how E-115 works. It also exploded one time and they had to rebuild. Which is kind of strange considering that article that just came out last week about that massive mine that they're getting ready to start drilling if they haven't already drilled in China. It's supposed to be like 32,000 feet into the Earth's crust. Like that's a deep hole. That's a deep hole.
I agree. I couldn't imagine, like, I can't even fathom how big of a hole that is.
No, it would be as deep as airplanes fly high. 30,000.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Are the made-to-spec craft you described just the metal-looking spheres observed and brought up in the latest AARO hearings? Seems to be lots of orbs, discs, and tic-tacs. Yes, this is exactly why they all always look so different. Things like triangles and hard-edged squares don't exist, though. Pill shapes are extremely sought after, and some thinks that they are freighters. Not a huge variety you expect from made-to-spec craft. The best analogy I can give for the variety comment is think of it like wrapping food in tinfoil on a plate. It's a bad analogy, but you get it. Usually they will always be round or oval, sometimes even pill-shaped. The tinfoil fits the intended function of just covering everything without squishing it. Even stories of Majestic 12 suspect that the president didn't have a need to know. Staff at our agencies were usually older and had been there forever. This track when considering term limits. Many abduction stories seem malevolent. Previous post I mentioned tools. I think the harm they cause is the same as cutting open a mouse to check the local population for signs of bad health and population. It's just collateral damage.
It's not a very good way to speak about everyone.
No. They just, it's like they just don't care.
And I definitely agree with the statement of the president's never in the need to know.
No,
anyone with a term limit is never going to be in the need to know.
No,
because that's just, it's not smart to tell people those things. You know, when you're not looking at exiting the building, and your boss is, well, he doesn't need to know, because eventually he's just going to be out the door anyways. You know, it just seems like it would be way more of a liability than not.
Yeah, it'd be like it could be a blackmailing bargaining chip too. You know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm gonna stay a little bit longer.
Right.
You know, I know what the aliens are doing.
Yeah.
And you know who else could know? All of Twitter.
Yeah.
All of every social media.
Oh, that's what I would want to do.
It would be weird to be in a position to where you have access to these kind of answers.
It would be awesome.
It would be awesome. You'd also have a very big target on your back.
Yeah.
They can get the smoke too. Okay, do they just not like humans and like the planet? What's to stop them from killing us all? They could absolutely destroy us if they wanted to. They have started launch sequences before that we suspect were tests on what are we dealing with. My personal view is that they have to stay out of our way, but keep us from destroying ourselves. I imagine life somewhere elsewhere in the universe often destroys itself in a similar fashion. That's crazy that they can start our launch codes.
Yeah, it's also a weird statement to say that they have to stay out of our way.
Yeah.
It's a very
have to stay.
interesting way of putting that.
Almost like don't interfere with free will.
Yeah, it's
Free
weird.
will.
It's a weird way to word that.
Do you think we will get more answers from the government, aka disclosure, as in them telling us that aliens exist, or will the cover-up continue? At one point, they briefed us about opening up information about the craft, but not the construction unit. Nothing happened for months. New leadership shows up, and suddenly it's back to bullshits and secrets again. As to the United States Air Force, they must have images and videos of these things pretty close up. You'd think the agency with the most knowledge of the subject. The United States Air Force goal is to fight other countries. They have footage, but it was mostly discovered and recorded by sheer chance. The Space Force, however, will be an entirely new thing. Their focus is similar to ours with a sprinkle of disinformation. Are all craft related to this factory in grays? The ones we looked at, yes. Or are there more species coming here? Possible, but I wasn't made aware. It wouldn't shock me. I've wondered if we are being protected from others. That's a terrible statement.
Yeah, I agree. It also makes you wonder why we're being protected.
Yeah, because they're harvesting souls.
Yeah, that could very well be. They don't, get your hand out of my cookie jar, boys.
Yep. Do we produce it, or is it collected from other craft and just recycled? Because that seems to be the case. I'm referring to E.115. We tried to produce it and failed. We produced a shitty variant of it and used it for certain parts we build. Most of what we use for things that cannot be replaced is recycled. Our ability to rehash their shit has gotten better, but slowly. Or is it used up to the point we need to produce it to continue testing? They set aside certain amounts of E115 for research. Most of it goes back toward reuse. Is there tech that was gained from these crafts that the military widely uses today, or civilians for that matter? A lot of your stealth aircraft sport smoother designs for one. Learning to track them also helped the targeting software. Laser technology comes to mind since it's a crippled version of what they use. Most of what I saw was way above us. It's hard to put the hammers and how you see through them into words. It's not like a drone camera, and it's not a clear image, to us at least. Can you clarify when you said testing for contamination? They have a distinct fascination with radiation. Remember how I mentioned they didn't go far from home base? When Fukushima happened, the construction facility deployed multiple UFOs to the location over multiple weeks. They were also very interested in Ebola at one point. We can't confirm abductions there since the local population is, nobody really cared about them. According to Elizondo, Italians seem to have a good grasp on the phenomenon, including that they originate from somewhere in the Mediterranean. Is it possible that there may be another factory there? Starting this thread and seeing everyone mention the Arctic has me wondering if there were others. It would make sense with other sightings since most mentioned are far from home, and that is rare. Does the moon hold anything of interest? No, not that I'm aware of. We know that UFOs entering and exiting the atmosphere do not go toward any known planet that often. That's interesting. So seems like they're all out of our solar system. Are the flying orbs just scouts or research drones? Do you mean orbs in the sky, or do you mean landed craft deploying them? I've mentioned previously that there are tools that are shaped like hammers. They emit extremely bright lights and are used as sort of a drone scout. They're able to view almost 360 degrees and detect everything from minerals to bio. If a human encounters them, they're usually deployed to keep watch and figure out when to wrap up and leave. Do you think they interfere with our general science and investigations? Yes, they do not want to be studied. They also do not collect down craft or occupants. It seems to be like an oh fucking well approach. E-115 is the exception. They don't seem to enjoy the idea of us toying with it. Do they seem to learn when the crafts get caught? Yes, there is an area that they actively avoid in Mexico, among others. They also deploy more drones than piloted aircraft unless absolutely necessary. Are they harder to capture next time? Yes. Is the technology they reproduce increasing rapidly or lagging for years? I wouldn't say it's an increase in technology. It's more like adjustments and better understanding of how to operate. It's one reason we thought about 100 years for the first deployment of the construction facility. If we're here for years, we would have seen a majority of all the adjustments made. Is your department team using AI to learn more about the findings you make around with their tech? Not when I was around, at least. He says, taking a break for a bit, be on later tonight. Does this factory produce any signature, heat, electromagnetic? How do you track it? Both. We rely mostly on detecting the gravity it produces. It normally doesn't produce heat outright. When it does, we believe it's in the process of construction since a small heat buildup can be detected when a craft returns or exits. We think this happens when it's being broken back down into parts or assembled. We can only detect these heat signatures when it's near the surface of the ocean, so sometimes a UFO will actually pop out near us. How do you know about their other countries' efforts? We don't obtain information directly as it's passed along to us. My guess would be the typical way we get anything such as spying it or bribery. Why does the U.S. Air Force not know about the other countries' efforts, but your department does? My department sits above the U.S. Air Force for UFO recovery and information in the same way the U.S. Air Force sits above me on military plans for Ukraine. We were told at the time if we had to give away information, only tell the public what the U.S. Air Force knows. I'm pretty sure other countries have departments like mine, or I'm pretty sure other countries know departments like mine exist. Alternatively, do they know about the U.S. efforts? Russia and China, yes. Others, it depends on the level of information. Some governments still don't even know aliens exist, or they aren't sure. How do we know you aren't some FBI agent? There's no way for me to prove that to you. You should always be asking it, though. All I can say is pay attention to things as time progresses, and you'll be able to look back and see that I was right. The government does know about them, but only at the majestic level. I stated before, I'm not naming the department. The term majestic was considered outdated. The symbols that you did see, did they remind you of any other symbol that you've seen on Earth? No, just exactly what I had mentioned before. OP, what do you make of Eric Davis' memo? I believe you, by the way. Oh, all they did was link that, so scratch that one. How many craft do you have, or how many craft do we have at the moment? I don't know. I can tell you I've seen about 18 different models pass through testing and research. Is Lockheed Martin involved in reverse engineering? All he says is they are a great company, aren't they? Can you describe some of the other tools found on the wrecked crafts? We have found things as simple as basic tools akin to tweezers in the lab. One thing that sticks out to me was an oval-shaped silver ball that would change colors based on how close it was to an energy source. Another would be a sheet of metal that allowed you to view bones by placing it near someone's hand or body part. Can you describe any injuries or death that occurred involving alien craft? I've witnessed no deaths or injuries aside from corpses. I never got to see one we had with an abductee in it, or with an abductee, but they weren't sure at the time if she died on impact. We've been told that aliens use us for food. Never found any food on board. Could be because they remove it before we arrive. My question is, are they going to invade humanity en masse? I think wiping us out would be easy for them currently. No idea why they would wait. What do you know about E-115? What I've described above. It has its own field of gravity, but it's weak on its own. Is it a really stable isotope of the element with the atomic number 115? Yes, but I'm no expert in that field, though. We were just given the basics. How would you go about interacting with it? You can hold it. Removal is done very gently, though. Where is it typically found in a downed craft? A compartment near the engine, usually not far from the center of the craft. If the craft has a frame with a centerpiece, we have to extract it from that angle. Somebody says, this is fake. How can an element be anti-gravity? It would fly into space and you couldn't find it. Maybe my explanation was bad, but I feel like I feel like it's just your reading comprehension. It emits a weak field of gravity and it doesn't float away or hover. Why would they allow you to just investigate them? I think they just cut their losses. We don't get much opportunity otherwise. Couldn't it be on purpose to see how much you can discover? Just looking at the way they operate, I doubt it. Isn't it dangerous that the Chinese have this tech? The U.S. is quite upset over it. They won't trade either because they know we will trade in bad faith. So they aren't exactly wrong. Are all these models powered by E-115? Every model I've seen operates this way. I've also wanted to see inside the construction unit for this reason alone. The Varginha incident. I had to Google a bit of this. It seems somewhat far out there if I'm being honest. What's up with the anal probes? I think we both know where this thread would go if I touch on this topic. Are the female aliens sexy? The ones with or without the probes? Here we are. We're into the real 4chan now. What about the Zimbabwe incident where the craft with the Greys landed in Rua, Zimbabwe? It doesn't seem likely, but here's the kicker. Based on what they describe, I believe them minus a few things that they said. Out of curiosity, do you know of any direct contact with the agents by them? Never heard of direct contact started from their end. That doesn't mean we haven't, though. I'll never understand this. The current implementation of compartmentalization and complete secrecy is a fool's errand. One of the minor reasons I'm here, we agree. I do think the initial panic would be really bad, especially for religious communities. Does the recently closed Trinity case have any truth to it? Jacques Vallée wrote a book about it. No idea. Could these crashes have happened on purpose? I doubt it, but answered this earlier in better detail. Before the 20th century, have they influenced human culture in any way at all? The U.S. wasn't sure since we don't have information to use. The Sumerian stories were a common topic when talking about at least 100 years. I think it's odd young civilizations knew things they weren't supposed to know that far back. You've mentioned that they get upset at the mention of war and conflict. Extremely upset. If the threat is believable, like war with countries, etc. So we've communicated with them. How? How many times? Anytime the topic came up, there was no special mention of communication types, so I assume orally, quite a few times. What are they like? See the zookeeper comment I made above. It's hard to get them to respond to us in general. You just described Atlantis. The U.S. didn't agree that this was the case because they didn't have much faith pooled into one Greek and rare mentions of an underground city. Allegedly, certain Army personnel who had close encounters with UAPs would have sudden shifts in emotion and would complain of headaches. A few of these people died shortly after coming into contact. When examined, doctors would find evidence of radiation targeting specific areas of the brain. Gary Nolan thinks this is what Havana syndrome actually was or is. The whistleblower says, some tools used for abduction cause confusion and some calm, etc. Some also leave radiation, but nothing too crazy from what we saw.
So Havana syndrome is just focused radiation. It's kind of scary.
That is, and
it's like turning radiation into like a laser beam.
Yeah. And that was one of the theories, I think, when we went into Havana syndrome, that it was some sort of focused energy weapon.
Well, I never would have guessed it would have been fucking radiation.
Yeah, that sucks.
We all know radiation sucks.
Yeah, don't do that, governments.
Another thing I like about this submitter, I've noticed it a handful of times. I enjoy how he won't repeat himself.
Yeah, he's like, I already
Yes.
Go back.
Yeah, like it. To me, it makes it sound like he's less hungry for attention.
Yeah,
that way, because if he just kept reiterating the story, I feel like it just plays more to someone who wants the attention of it rather than someone who's like, no, dude, I'm getting out as much information as I can. I already did that. Go back and read it.
Yeah, and nothing of what he's claiming is like super that off the wall.
No, no,
nothing like head turning or it's I don't know. It's strange. I've seen a few true believers theorize that if aliens understood human physiology far better than we do, they could influence the brain with some sort of technology that we don't understand. Of course, this would have far-reaching implications about the human brain, mind control, etc. I can't speak to that area much. As I said previously, the tools aren't friendly ones. They would serve a better purpose wrangling cats than ensuring that a patient is content. Do you still believe in God? Absolutely not. It has a weird way. Somebody apologized for him having liver cancer, I believe. He said it has a weird way of making you appreciate everything in your life. I actually taste the water, and I drink now, if that makes sense. He says, I appreciate your concern, but I'm pretty fucked already. He says, family is important because he kept referring to us as cousins. He said they definitely do not view us as families. Look at the tool comments. Has there been any discussion internally about the origins of these beings and or the mobile facility? Only amongst ourselves, since we see the direction they enter and leave the solar system briefly. The higher-ups definitely know it just wasn't part of what we did. Once it leaves the planet, ignore it. I know you'd previously said 100 years as an estimate of the facility itself. The U.S. believes it's one extreme or the other. It arrived 100 years ago and started the process of discovery and construction versus it's been here since long ago, and oh hey, there's a ton of civilizations talking about this for ages. Someone said, did it come here from space? From space, yes. From long ago, I'm not entirely sure. And neither was the U.S. I lean more toward the recent contact. I'm guessing that the biology department has little to no communication with your department. I wouldn't even know they exist if I didn't see them around the bases. We get basic rundown from the higher-ups that they give to us. If we send information forward, it's always passed along. Any idea what happens to the ships, planes, and people that the construction unit disappears? Destroyed nearly instantly with zero suffering.
That's a plus.
Yeah.
I mean, at least you ain't got to suffer.
True. Better than a radiation beam to your dome.
That's what I'm saying.
Can you try to draw some of the symbols you saw for us? I can't remember anything too specific if I'm being honest. They all sort of look the same to me at this point. Does the language look linear like ours? Yes, but there are soft corners and things like dots, but not a whole lot. It says, is this a queen bee, essentially the mind of her workers? If you mean for the construction unit versus the UFOs, we've also wondered that too. If the construction unit was the singular mind of the whole operation. What about space-time manipulation? Are there any hunches there? Never heard any ideas pitched other than the engine's gravity causing time dilation. That's weird. Spill the official eternal name of where he works.
That's what I'm saying.
The dude replies, should I send you a copy of my driver's license too?
I would have said if you want to.
Says, I agree. OP is not only contradicting actual data we have on UAPs, but it's also acting like he has access to all compartmentalized departments of the DIA. If it provides any context, I knew a lot less until I managed the team the last few years. You should be skeptical of me.
I admire that. I admire those statements.
Somebody says, so a completely destroyed UFO could be reassembled. Who acts like that? It's like ripping out the RAM of a PC, damaging the motherboard, cutting the wires, peeing on the CPU before throwing it into a river. The next team investigates the damage, sends the PC to the next team and says, oh yeah, this is really hard to re-engineer. The way these are constructed, you cannot make an existing but damaged craft. You can only add on spare parts from another and close it up and call it good. Human repairs can only go so far on existing crafts. Instead, we have a much shittier iteration of what they build. Some parts are not reused. They are just materials for testing or research. Once again, it could be that I explained the process too poorly. We do not reassemble them. We quite literally bum parts and try to make our own. And some parts of the craft we have to have be made with human-made substitutions. The mechanism for piloting is one such part. We also add human things in. And then somebody responded to the guy who said he is contradicting the data we have on UAPs. He said, what in the fuck are you talking about? What actual data do we have on UAPs?
That's also what I'm saying. I mean, we're literally talking about this off air about how there is no like factual evidence for people like us.
Yeah. You're just going on information that you find,
right?
Which you can't prove one way or the other.
No, and I make that statement of like I admire those comments because I admire the fact where he tells it like it is to a degree of being like, you should question me.
Yeah,
like you shouldn't just trust me. You should question everything because that's how my thought process is when it comes to everything. Like in my next episode, like. I hate how people always utterly dismiss conspiracy theorists and that such because they're like, oh, you're being too paranoid or you're being this or you're being that. And the way I look at it is, no, you should be thankful that there are those people in the crowd who are ultra paranoid because, me and Steve have seen it in, I don't know how to word this, like litigation, for example. We have questions. So I ask these questions. Hey, what about this? And what about that? And then they're like, oh, yeah. We'll make that more clear in our writings. You know what I mean? So these hyper paranoid people will help bring things to light. Or at the very least, just close some fucking doors.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The questions aren't going to be answered if they're not asked.
Exactly.
What the fuck are you talking about? What actual data do we have on UAPs? I'm not surprised some people think this way. There's a ton of shrouded information on the topic. Debunkers annoy the fuck out of me. If you're going to debunk with fact instead of unsupported opinions. I think they are necessary, though. They aren't wrong. This community should be skeptical all the time.
Yeah.
Someone says, shrugging it off to smoking DMT is a bit unwise. Then a bunch of governments, including our own, dedicated departments to bullshit. So he's got a point there. If there was no smoke to this fire, why would they spend so much money
exactly
looking into it?
Exactly.
UFOs are influencing human minds supposedly comes from a government source. I'd be more inclined to believe this aspect alone. A lot of posts in this thread made me wonder if there were more construction units, etc. I also found the memo post interesting specifically because of the year that was mentioned. That was that memo I'd mentioned before. I actually searched it up and found the memo, but I haven't read through it yet, so that may be for future investigation.
The other thing, too, about making a good point about spending gobs and gobs of money, you also have to think about government as a business, right? Like, you wouldn't waste that money on dumb shit, but it's also possible because people would be like, oh, well, why did they stop looking into remote viewing or the collective consciousness or whatever the case may be? Well, maybe they were getting nowhere fast and a new boss came in town and was like, listen, we're done wasting money on this shit. Or maybe a new project popped up where they're like, all right, we're going to put the remote viewing on the back burner because we want to start hammering in the, like, if you look at it from a business perspective, it tends to make a little bit more sense to the average Joe, I think, because it's all management, time and money,
and the whole way the government goes about investigating things is a giant smokescreen.
Yeah,
they'll get so far, they'll rename it and pass it on.
Yeah,
get so far, rename it, pass it on.
Exactly,
and it just keeps all that in a gray area where nothing can be easily investigated, nothing can be easily researched.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because MK Ultra, you could be like, well, I'm gonna look up the files on MK Ultra, and you find it to this point, and then it stops. Oh, this is where it ends. But in all reality, they renamed it and shipped it over to the CIA instead of the FBI or whatever the case may be.
Like
and
Project
now it's
Signs, Project Blue Book.
Yeah, and if they keep handing it around, you're only able to find checkpoints.
Yep.
You know, and then all of a sudden it just drops off, and you're like, well, I didn't get to see where the rest of this went.
And if you look into it, a lot of the information overlaps. So if you dove into this project and then it turns into this, and you start reading the second project, you're like, oh, I already know about all this shit.
Right. When
in reality, they've added on to the back end and just kept trucking along.
Yeah, and it does. It makes it impossible to. And then, like, if you went from MK Ultra to, we'll just say it got called Stargate. Well, now you have guys like me and Steve that are saying, no, Stargate is just a continuation of MK Ultra, but that's our opinion. Yeah, it's not a factual statement to where, because people could be like, no, it's two different things, or you're way off your rocker. You know, it just,
and essentially it's almost both true.
Right.
Yes. It is a new project. Yes. But it is piggybacking off the old project.
Right.
Which is essentially the same project.
Exactly. Yeah, and it just it turns into a breeding ground of its own, which they have gotten really fucking good at if you think about it. They use ourselves against ourselves.
Oh yeah.
You know, because we're just good at that. We're good at we're our own worst enemies almost all the time.
Yeah, we like to argue and debunk.
Yeah.
What's his compartment and why is it the ultimate treasure trove? Even if you don't believe me, I think we can agree that the bio department would have more info than me by conversation with them alone. This is before we even include leadership. Are they following SpaceX operations? They respond rather quickly to any type of rocketry. I imagine they are and will be. Someone was talking about craft that they saw, said didn't make any noise, was completely black, like black metal. There's no way a being could resist that sharp turn without turning into a puddle of blood. They make noise, but not very much of it. Also, they can stop inertia when we still struggle with that. That's pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Has any writing been discovered on the crafts? Yes. Or any tools inside of them? Yes. If so, has it been linguistically linked to any known languages? I'm not sure, but it doesn't look like anything I've seen before. What specifics of the propulsion system can you reveal? I covered this already, but as for the Mercury comment, no. I'm not sure what he means. I know they mentioned Mercury in last week's episode, so I'm sure it probably ties back to that. 4chan is strange, where you can just click on someone's comment and then respond to it, and then it'll go back down to the bottom of the thread, so it's kind of all over the place. If the U.S. Navy, etc., knows where the construction facility is, and he just stops him. He goes, they don't. A lot of Bob Lazar's proven bullshit. Can you provide me with a source where what Bob says is bullshit? What does the interior of the craft look like? Please describe it in detail. I already did this. It's always cramped, hard to stand fully upright in. For reference, I'm 5'8". There's almost never a storage facility unless it's dedicated to something for the craft. There's always a method of interacting with the craft. Tools are not freely placed around the craft and have a dedicated placement. Have you only ever entered or seen the orbs? The hammers? If so, I've used them. Or have you been involved with the disc too? No, please be more specific. It sounds like Tic Tacs or cigar-shaped ones are transports nobody has gotten a hold of, correct? Cigar shapes are very rare. Correct. We were told finding one would be career-changing. We suspect that they are transports, but ultimately we do not know. So it sounds like this person that just asked this question is also in the know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There have been a couple questions throughout this that really stick out because you're like, well, wait a minute. How the fuck are you guys learning about all this shit?
Yeah, it's weird.
And if you think about it, if you really think about it, you don't really hear about many cigar-shaped ones.
No.
You really don't.
No.
And I've never thought about it like that before.
And if you've watched any of the news in UFO Twitter in the last couple of weeks, these metallic discs are all over the place.
Right.
It's what the AARO and NASA were just talking about. That there are so many sightings of these metallic discs, or not disc, but orbs. Of these metallic orbs, these just metal balls that nobody knows what they are.
It's so weird.
Somebody's like, it's a Mylar balloon. But there were aircraft carriers with like hundreds of these orbs around them.
That's strange. Do they have estimated size on these orbs?
I don't know. They don't look large. I'll have to find some pictures after we go through here.
I don't know what would be scarier, if they were big or if they were like basketball sized.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
Because either way, it's kind of scary as fuck.
Yeah, remind me and I'll pull up some pictures because it's like been the talk since NASA held their big UAP information meeting this last week. These metallic orbs are all over the place.
That's weird.
Where are we here? There are many stories of crashed discs. Can you please elaborate them? I've never seen a disc. I'm curious to know what you think. Prior to the zookeeper comment, I thought they looked down on us as vile and worthless with intent to destroy everything around us, but that's changed. What role do you think Space Force will play in disclosure moving forward? Openly stated to us, discovery for internal use and disinformation to the public.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Also, very fucking weird that he says, I've never seen a disc before.
Strange.
It is weird. Because when you think of UFO, which one do you think of?
A disc.
A disc.
But he also states that they have been moving so far forward, like they have been evolving their craft as we go. Because he said in like 47, there were a lot more piloted crafts.
Right.
With crashes and victims, essentially.
It is, and it does play to his whole thing here that they evolve every crash.
Yeah.
Everything
keeps
evolves.
moving forward.
Because it's like, oh shit, well, we'll just say, the lightning affected this craft. Well, now we need to make adjustments, send it back out. It's not that they are not intelligent enough or don't have the technology for it. They just don't know how to implement it in some cases.
It's like this is what went wrong, fix it.
Yes.
This is what went wrong, fix it. What can we as a populace do to encourage your bosses to lighten up a little bit? This has always been on my mind. I think if we convinced another nation like China or Russia to come out, that the U.S. would have no choice but to come out as well. I think having the United States Air Force release their footage was a way to jumpstart SpaceX in a way. The Pentagon has already reported that legit UAPs are off-world vehicles not made on this Earth, while OP is claiming that they are made in a facility in the ocean. I stated multiple times we've seen them come and go from the planet. We suspect the construction facility is capable of space travel as well. He also stated that they were all unmanned. Reading comprehension is an issue here at 4chan. I said most of them are unmanned today. This is not strictly the case, and in prior years we dealt with piloted craft quite often. People with security clearances that large don't just get on 4chan and spill the beans. You're not wrong. And if it makes you feel better, watching my internet take a shit last night made me panic a bit, if I'm being honest. I could have also just ignored your post here. That is a bad feeling. Like, we're not UFO whistleblowers, but we've had things happen where things cut out and you're like,
you start to question
it
things.
feels like somebody is checking in. That allows various agencies to give them free access. I do not have free access to everything. Visiting crash sites comes with a lot of information by default, though. Providing zero evidence toward his claims, also burden of proof fallacy. Was I supposed to steal data from work and post it here freely? How about a copy of my clearance or work badge? Yes, Anon, just let me out myself completely. It says, okay, so element E115 provides a weak gravity field, and the engine amplify the phenomenon through resonance. The gravity field remains the same for E115, but the output of the engine produces almost all the gravity used for travel. What was the language that Bob Lazar leaked? Let me try that again. Was the language that Bob Lazar leaked completed? I've never seen it. Could you post a picture? Any info on crop circles? I've never seen one or heard of them being relevant to our studies. I have a few questions, if you please. You have a lot, so I'm not answering every single thing. Has there been any unusual effects on the environment or wildlife? No, they do not study animals. Why or how are they avoiding Mexico? One area around there is a bad crash zone for them. Why was 2002 a big year? A lot of activities and changes in operations for both us and them. A lot of secrecy issues surfaced that year as well. Funding also jumped through the roof. Is this job stressful? Yes, it strained my marriage greatly. Does it have anything to do with your illness? I've wondered about it, but ultimately I'll probably never know. What kind of training qualifications are needed to work in this field? Your record needs to be clean as fuck, but your education can vary. Do you listen to public sightings or go off your own agency's intel? Agency intel all the way. Nearly all of it is passed down verbally in person. How does the government prevent or respond to potential national security threats posed by UFOs coming and going in and out of the atmosphere or oceans? Wait for crashes. The only time everyone is all hands on deck is if they screw with nukes. We mostly just watch them and wait for them to fuck up. Just to steal and learn the tech? Yes. Majestic 12. That term is more of a history lesson than anything else now. OP, if you're dying, why can't you just tell us the department name and share some photos of the documents? I'd like to appreciate what little time I have left. See the above post about my internet last night. Anyway, why do you think cloaking technology isn't deployed by the UAPs? It shouldn't be that difficult to bend light. He says, fuck, I wish I could show you one of the images from our training. Sometimes we get lucky and find very odd variants of UFOs. The same setup as usual, but with interesting additions. Pay less attention to Epstein, someone says. Will this help? Fuck Epstein. Do you know where in space they come from? Any star systems in particular? Higher-ups knew, but they never passed the information on. Any craft found on the Earth that was ancient? None that I saw. What is it like keeping everything a secret from humanity? What do you do for work? I travel and do inspections for the government. Boring, really. Do you have any idea what's going on in there? First I've heard of it. It makes me wonder if there were others that did what I did, but in different areas. I'm assuming they're asking about another place on the planet, maybe the Arctic again. Plasma physics has developed greatly in the last few decades. You should be paying attention to things like this long after I leave. Laser technology as well. We're going to hit the bump limit before the OP comes back. Half the thread wants me to keep going, so I'll likely remake this thread. Might need to wait a bit before the weekend. It will be busy for me. The abductees that are returned, who are monitored, how are those individuals dealt with? I suspect another department handles that. We do nothing with them from my end. Do we know why certain individuals are selected? Not all, but they like picking from remote areas exposed to disease or radiation. Capabilities to remove someone, let us say, from a building in a large city without civilizations noticing. They have to get quite close to start the abduction process. Never seen it happen freely in a crowded city. And that was the last post he posted on April 27th. And that's when the thread came down.
I wish he would start it up again so we could ask him to come on the show.
Yeah, that's no shit.
That'd be awesome.
It is a lot better, like being able to hear someone's inflections as they speak on these things. I don't know where I'm at on this because it's not cinematic enough to be unbelievable.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The information he has seems like it would be information that someone at a mid-level clearance of these things would have.
Bob Lazar. Right? I mean, because, don't get me wrong, Lazar's story is fantastic, but it's not, like, it's not cinematic, like you were saying. Like, it's not, because even Lazar talked about how everything was compartmentalized. Like, there wasn't one person seeing every single bit of it.
It's also interesting that he states that all the important information is passed verbally from the top down. That way there's no paper trail. It's fucked
Makes
up.
sense.
I did find an article that kind of ties in. Someone posted it on Reddit. It is a Popular Mechanics article from 2019 that takes place in the same exact area where this guy says that this big ship, construction ship, is located. So it's not very long. I mean, it's kind of long, but I'll read some of it to you. It says, Navy pilot says dark mass made torpedo disappear. The retired Navy commander who spotted the infamous tic-tac-shaped UFO relayed another strange story from a Navy helicopter pilot on the Joe Rogan Experience. Back in the 90s, the pilot was retrieving BQM drones and a submarine telemetry torpedoes from the ocean when he saw an unexplained dark mass coming up from the depths. The pilot said the torpedo just got sucked down under the water and the object just descended back down into the depths. So, I won't go into the whole thing. That just kind of touched on it. That kind of, I'm not going to say leads credence to what our whistleblower said, but it is interesting.
Yeah, it's odd regardless.
Yeah. Especially something that they would see as a threat, which would be a torpedo.
Well, and I wouldn't assume that the military would fire a torpedo at a whale, you know, like, or a giant squid.
True.
Like, I feel like it would have had to been fucking big.
And he said that there have been attempted strikes on whatever this construction unit is.
Right. Like, I feel like they would have to be a rather large anomaly for the military to go, shoot it. Just fucking shoot it.
Yeah. Send it, boys.
I just don't feel like that's a very common practice.
No.
Could be. I could be 100% wrong. They could be good old boys like me and Steve who would just go fucking shoot it.
And how much do they missile test out on the east coast of the United States, or torpedo test? Is that a common thing?
I don't know. You wouldn't think so.
No.
But it's hard to tell.
It is strange. I don't know. Let us know what you think, Hollow Colt. Like I said,
remember all them times they would I don't know if they were nukes or not, but they would practice detonating massive bombs in the ocean.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
I actually saw a conspiracy theory on the Christmas Eve tsunami from 2004 that was caused by a U.S. mass nuke detonated in the ocean.
It wouldn't surprise me because we are dumb.
Yeah. But very interesting.
I liked it. I thought it was good.
It's
believable enough for me.
Yeah, in 4chan again, they say take everything from there as fiction. But time and time again, things that were leaked on there were not fiction.
Well, the thing about 4chan that you have to remember is that there's a bunch of nerds on 4chan, right? Like straight up nerds, dudes that have the ability to save this stuff quick.
And people in the know use it for anonymity.
Right.
Epstein's suicide was posted on 4chan before it was ever officially released to the public. How fucked is that?
Right. It is. It's crazy.
That means
but
somebody...
it's just one of them spots where weird shit survives.
It is. And there's some fucked up shit on there. It is like the Wild West, but you almost have to have a platform like that for things like this to exist.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right. You're gonna have people who come on there making shit up. It's gonna happen because there are gonna be people that read this and think it's all just one big script. And they're I don't know. People are just fucking weird like that.
And you would think if you were gonna come on here and weave this tale, create this web, you would make it so much more like extravagant. You know what I mean?
You'd definitely make it more compelling.
Yeah, the shit that he touches on isn't really that. It isn't anything we haven't heard before.
No, because he could have elaborated on why they were here.
Yeah,
which would have drew a lot of people in.
And he even answered the questions that like didn't need to be answered. Like he said, he's like, I could just ignore these questions. But like even the most asinine questions, he would at least respond to. It's strange.
That, and I mean, people feel a type of way when they have really bad news.
Yeah. And dude's dying.
That's what I'm saying. You got the worst case news. But it also, for most people, hits a little bit whenever he admits to being scared when his internet was going out. Because even though he's dying, he still knows what could be coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, because in that moment when you think they're onto you, it's like you forget. It's like that you would forget that you're dying of cancer. Now you're like, oh shit, the boss has just found out. Oh fuck.
Yeah.
And maybe later on you'd re-rationalize and be like, well, I'm dying anyway, so fuck them. But in that moment, in that one split second of a moment, you're definitely going to be scared.
Yeah. I agree. Again, if nothing else, it was entertaining. It was a good read. Let us know what you think, Holocult. That's the end of it, unless he does come back and post a new thread. But as of right now, the last communication was April 27th, and the entire thread has been taken down. You have to go onto the 4chan archive site to find it because it is completely gone from the regular 4chan site, which is weird in itself. But until next time, we hope you have a good Monday. We hope you have a good work week. Check us out on Wednesdays on the Night Shift Live. Come and kick it in the chat with all of our friends. And spread the word of the Holocult. Till we meet again, stay safe. Stay weird. And just because it was posted on 4chan doesn't mean it's not true.